All right. Hello, Shide family. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. I know it took some time, but we have finally gone virtual and we are super excited to have you all here with us. So thank you for hopping on and being a part of this tasting. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Chelsea. I am part of the hospitality team here at the Carmel Tasting Room. And today I have the honor of tasting through three delicious wines with the talented winemaker and wine educator, Miss Marta. So Marta, I will let you go ahead and introduce yourself in just a minute. But first we'll go over the housekeeping, the boring stuff so that we can start drinking. So today the layout is we are going to be tasting through three different wines, our Grenache Blanc, our Adlat Red, and our Petite Syrah. And those were the three wines that we just released in our September club shipment. But whatever you guys have in front of you right now is absolutely perfect. We are just happy to be here with you, drinking and sharing some time together. Also, at the very end of this, if you guys stay tuned, we will be offering a special promotion code just for you guys who are on this call. So stay tuned for that. And we definitely want this to be super interactive. So if you have any questions, there is a Q&A button at the bottom of your screen. Please feel free to shoot us any questions you have during the tasting, or if it's a more general question, we'll get to it at the end. So with that, Marta, if you want to introduce yourself, I'm sure everyone wants to know a little bit about how you got into winemaking and what brought you to Shide.
Well, thank you. Welcome, everybody. It's wonderful to see you all. I really wish we could see you all. I fell in love with grapes and with wine after a trip after I graduated from college. And I ended up picking grapes in the south of France in a small town called Quicquignon. And I fell in love with the fact that you were taking one agricultural product and turning it into something else that you could have for years to come. So I came home and I went back to school and I got my master's in viticulture and enology. Viticulture, which is grape growing, and enology, which is winemaking. When I finished with my master's, I wanted to work with grapes, but this is in the early 80s. Remember, that's 40 years ago, and not a lot of people wanted a woman working in their vineyards. So I ended up on the winemaking side, but I feel fortunate for that because I can walk out into a vineyard and I can see mineral deficiency problems or disease problems, and I understand the growth of the vine. And I think a lot of winemakers don't have that background, so I feel very fortunate to that. I have been making wine in Monterey County for the last 40 years, all in Monterey County, and have been at Shide for the last 11.
All right. Well, it certainly sounds like you're qualified to taste through these wines with me. So I'm sure everyone's as thirsty as I am. So we can start with the first wine that we're going to be tasting today. And that is our 2019 Grenache Blanc. So pop that open. Right. Okay, so Marta, I know people have heard of the red Grenache grape, but Grenache Blanc is something that haven't heard of. So let's first, start with the cheers. Cheers
Cheers to all.
on here as well. And why don't you just start telling us a little bit about the grape itself?
So Grenache Blanc is a very important grape in France. It's about the fifth most important. Most of the Grenache Blanc in the world is planted in the south of France, in the Roussillon area and the southern Rhone, often with Marsanne and Roussanne. It wasn't really brought to California until the 1990s, however. So it's a relatively new variety for California. There's only about 600 acres in California in total, and Shide has just a little under 1.98.
And it's a mutation, correct?
That's right. And before we go, I would like to share with you some grapes, some Grenache Blanc in the vineyard that we were walking down through there just before they were harvested this year. So I think Brandon has that queued up.
Yes, our sideline producer. I see him working his magic.
You'll be able to see how big these clusters are and how many there are on the vine.
Oh, wow. Yeah, those are huge.
Yeah, they're almost table grape in size. So they are really very, very big.
Probably tastes better than table grapes anyway.
So Grenache, Grenache is a mutation. At Blanc is a mutation of Grenache Noir, and Grenache Noir was originally grown in the Aragon region of Spain and France. And what happens when you get a mutation? Mutation can happen very suddenly, in a year, or it can happen slowly over a time due to virus or disease or climate pressures. So we have another a picture of a mutation that happened in a single year. And this is a chimera. And this is, you can see half has pigment and half doesn't. And so this can happen in a single year. And so you can imagine a grower walking through a vineyard, having beautiful red fruit all around him. And all of a sudden he sees one shoot of one cane that's producing fruit that's all white. And this is, for instance, how you had said Pinot Noir gave rise to Pinot Gris and Pinot Blanc. This happens to be a Sauvignon Blanc leaf, but in Grenache Blanc, this could happen as well. And so what happened is most grapes are propagated asexually, which means they're not bred, we're not planted from seed. So most growers will take a cutting and essentially stick it in the ground. And so what this grower would have done when he found these white grapes growing is take a cutting from that cane, shove it in the ground, and then propagate that vine. And that's how they ended up with this Grenache Blanc. Now, when it was brought to California in the 1990s, our governmental regulatory agency wouldn't consider them as separate varieties. They considered Grenache Noir, which is the red variety, and Grenache Blanc to be all combined into one big happy Grenache family. So it wasn't until 2002 that they actually said, yes, Grenache Blanc is a separate variety.
All right, so I'm looking at the color, and from what I read, there's like 30% skin contact on it. You can see the gold. I don't know if you can see it up here, but to me, I'm thinking orange wine, which is, that super new trendy thing that everyone's drinking. So is that what this is? What exactly is going on with this skin fermentation?
Well, I guess you could say a part of this is orange wine. So this was all harvested at the same time, and we took part of it and we put it into the press. And we pressed the juice off the skins, and we put it into a stainless steel tank and fermented it cold to try to keep a lot of these aromatic fruity qualities. Then we took another part of it and we fermented it in 1.5 ton fermenter bins. And we fermented it just like you would if you were making red wine. So we would punch it down a couple times a day. It got warm and it fermented really fast. And then when we ultimately pressed that wine off, we kept those two lots separate. So we had the stainless steel tank lot, and we had this lot that had been fermented on the skins. Now, when you ferment on the skins, you get a lot of color that comes from the skins. You get a lot of flavors, and you get a lot of extracts, which is why this tends to be a little bit of a weightier wine. Now, the grapes that were fermented on the skins, we put into neutral French oak barrels, and we kept these separate until just prior to bottling. And then we tasted them to see if we wanted to add 1/3 or 1/4 or what have you. And we ended up with 1/3 of this blend being fermented on the skins and 2/3 in tank.
That's awesome. So the last vintage didn't have is this the first time we've done it with the Grenache Blanc?
No, this is, I think, the 3rd year that we've done like this. But I think it's varied a little bit. I think, I can't remember exactly. I think it was a 1/3 last year and maybe 25% the year before.
Okay. I get like pear, a little bit of honeysuckle on this one.
Oh yeah, very bright fruit, a lot of stone fruit. Citrus, also get kind of a green melon characteristic. And then when you taste it, you should get a lot of that really bright acidity. And it feels weightier and just weightier, and then because of the structure from the skin contact.
Yeah, it definitely has, you get the structure, the body, but it's still, like you said, it's super acidic, so it balances itself like really nicely.
Yes, it does.
I'm thinking right now, because it's a little after 5 and I'm always hungry. So I am thinking like a creamy chicken piccata or like a really fresh seafood linguine or something would pair up really nicely with this one.
You know, people talk about pairing wine with food. They talk about the weight and the texture of the food with the weight and the texture of the wine. So that's why a wine like this could pair easily with something that is a little bit weightier, like the fettuccine, or even, I think, because of the acidity, it would go with some fried chicken.
Yeah.
So I also wanted to bring up, because some people get confused, and when we start talking about descriptors, where they came from. And so a lot of times people say, well, what did you add that pineapple, or did you add that apricot or the green apple or what have you to the wine? And no, we didn't. Prior to the 1970s and early 80s, most wine was described by what I would call vague terms, things like bold and sexy and that kind of thing. And in the 1980s, a professor from the University of California, Davis, invented what we call the aroma wheel, which some of you might have seen. And that kind of allowed winemakers to talk about wine using memories that are evoked. So when you smell something, you go, oh, I remember what that smells like. And when someone that's involved in an industry like I am, we've had to learn to categorize our sense of smell. Someone in the perfume industry, the same kind of thing. But most people, as we age, kind of categorize things into good, bad, and familiar. But if you wanted to go learn, you can always go into the supermarket, pick up an apple or a strawberry, something, and smell it and try and remember what it smells like.
Okay, so Marta, while you're drinking, I have a question from Matt who wants to know if French oak barrels, if there's any wheat-based paste on it. So I'm guessing this is one of those when people kind of ask about the gluten-free wine. Yeah, so if you could answer that question.
In barrels, most barrels, they don't really put anything to hold the staves together. And especially if it was a neutral barrel, it had been used, if there was any, usually if they're in a barrel, when they make a barrel, the head part is the only part that they put any sort of paste. And it's usually not always wheat paste. It's a variety of things. But it's a small amount, and it's usually done just to help seal the head. And over time, if that barrel had been used periodically, there was minimal gluten characteristic.
So someone gluten-free would probably be okay.
There would be no issues with someone that had a gluten issue.
Okay, so I've got another question, and this one is from Francesca, and she's just curious what the difference between a mutation is and a clone.
Oh, okay. Well, they're almost the same. So that's it. So, for instance, in Pinot Noir, you have lots of clones. In Cabernet, maybe you only have 12. But in Pinot Noir, you have several hundred. So again, it would be the same kind of thing. A grower's got a vine and he's walking through the vineyard, and all of a sudden he sees, wow, this vine, this cane started putting off some fruit that looks different. Maybe the cluster is more straggly. Maybe the berries are bigger, but yet it came from this parent vine that he knows was the same. So these mutations give rise to clones. I hope that answered that question.
Yeah, no, I think so. And then one more question, and then my glass is empty. But I do have another question. Jim and Barb are talking about how people are starting to talk about bourbon oak barrels and what impact this has on the wine, or is this more just like a marketing kind of gig?
That's a marketing kind of gig. Back in my younger days, we didn't have a lot of availability for really nice barrels. So we had, so a lot of winemakers, especially modest wineries, would buy used bourbon barrels. But I will tell you my favorite bourbon barrel story. So I was washing some barrels and they had been used for bourbon, and it was a hot day out in the sun. And what we would use to save the barrels is we drop a burner down into the barrel, and it burns a little sulfur wick, and it kind of keeps the barrel while it's empty. Well, I dropped this burner in and I got about 2 barrels down, and that barrel exploded. It just went kaboom! And because of all the fumes that came out of that barrel. So it's, I think now it's more of a marketing tool. People say that, but it's like my mom always said, what things are going to come back in style. And I kind of think that that's kind of what happened.
Okay. All right, well, let's move on to the next one here. And Christina, for anyone jumping on late, we are tasting through 3 wines from the Estate Wine Club. So we just did the Grenache Blanc, and we've got 2 more, the Odd Lot Red and the Petite Syrah. So this is our 2018 Odd Lot Red, fan favorite from all the club members. So happy to be drinking this. So this one we bottled back in April, and we did just over 600 cases, I believe. And I know most people are thinking the name just comes from an odd lot mix of a bunch of different varieties, but it also kind of has another meaning for us here at Scheid. The Scheid family has a pretty large background in finance, and I'm actually going to read this because otherwise I'll completely butcher it. But also means less than the standard 100 shares for stocks. So that's kind of how we got that play on words with our Odd Lot White and our Odd Lot Red. I will not be taking questions on finance or stocks. So you can ask me anything else regarding that, but just a fun fact if people wonder about it. So a question I get in the tasting room a lot about this Odd Lot Red. It's, like I said, a fan favorite. We sell out of it every year. Is this just the bottom of the barrel? Is just the leftover garbage wine? This must be easy. So Marta, if you want to kind of talk a little bit about how we make this wine. And I know we also have a clip to show people that this year's has 23 varietals. So we can throw that up on the screen for everyone to see what's in the Odd Lot this year as well.
So it's actually one of the hardest varieties, and it's not really a variety. It's one of the hardest wines to make. And you can see by looking at this breakdown that there is quite a variety of stuff in here. And I think that from a winemaking perspective, our goal is to make a wine that is not a single variety. We don't want somebody to pick it up and go, oh, that smells like Cabernet, or oh, that smells like Zinfandel. We want it to be kind of vague and a little bit mysterious. And it also gives us at Scheid an opportunity to use some of these varieties that we only have a very small amount of. At Scheid, we farm 39 different varieties, and 17 of those varieties are less than 2 acres. And some years we don't really get very much, maybe a single barrel or maybe 2 barrels, not enough to bottle on its own, but still a really wonderful wine that we would like to be able to share with you. So that's kind of our goal, is to be able to use some of these wines and share them with you and make an interesting non-varietal wine.
And I'm looking at the breakdown here, and I'm seeing a few white wines as well. So I see Sauvignon Blanc, Chardonnay, Albarino. Why would you put white varieties in a red blend?
From a winemaking perspective and for a taste perspective, it will brighten the fruit. It will lighten the wine. It won't make it as quite so heavy. And a lot of the fruit will come to the forefront. Some of you that you might be out there might have taken my blending class, and if you could try it. When you pour a little white wine into a little bit of red wine, and you can do this at home, you can see what it will do to the wine. And just a small amount. 5% is really, yeah, mostly we wouldn't go higher than that.
All right, so let's go ahead and get in it here. This one I get the red fruit for sure. Vanilla, kind of some toasted oak, but there's a lot going on with this one for sure.
Blackberry to me, elderberry, some strawberries, raspberries. I also get a lot of mocha, a lot of chocolate kind of components. And I think a lot of that comes from the barrels as well.
Okay.
It's structured, but I consider this a really juicy wine. It's something that makes you want to have another sip.
So we do have a question about the odd lot. So Kim and Lynn, hi guys.
Hi, Kim and Lynn.
They want to know if you ever put red wine or a red varietal in the odd lot white.
No, because there is it would change the color drastically. It doesn't take much red wine and white wine to change the color. In fact, there was a winery in Napa years ago, right when I got out of school, that they had a mistake. Somebody pumped some red wine into a white wine tank, and they decided to go ahead and bottled it, and they called it La Petite Faux Pas, or the little mistake.
Gosh. And then, so every year it changes, right? Like how many grapes we're putting in our odd lot. Because Patricia is asking the odd lot white, the 2019, I think we released most recently. How many varieties do you know offhand are in that odd lot white?
Oh, I have a feeling there was probably 9 or 11, maybe. I don't have that information in front of me. We
might have to go to our producer to look those facts.
I'm happy to send out any emails to anybody. So it's just we're trying to keep the fruit forwardness of that wine and the brightness. But again, we're trying to be a little bit vague and not have any one single variety stand out.
Mm-hmm. And then, because I just need an excuse to keep drinking this, so I'm going to keep that people have here. Lisa wants to know how you recommend storing leftover wine when you don't finish the bottle.
Well, I think it kind of depends on how long you plan to store it. If you think that you're going to drink it up within the next day or two, you could just put the screw cap back on, leave it on the counter, you'll be fine.
Yeah.
If, however, you think that you're going to drink one weekend and maybe drink half a bottle and then wait till the following week to have some more, you might consider something like a vacuum, which sucks the air out of the bottle. Or there are, you can also get a 375 milliliter bottle and pour half into the 375 milliliter bottle, because what you're trying to do is keep the minimal exposure to oxygen. One of my other techniques is you snag some marbles or some flower arranging glass beads, and when you have a glass, you put in a few marbles. And then you have another glass and you put in a few marbles. And what you're doing is you're raising the fill height and constantly pushing the oxygen out of the bottle.
I'm not gonna lie, personally, I don't really have a problem with the bottle, but I can understand that that's a good question to many people out there. And just so you guys know, we are getting a ton of questions in. So if we don't get to your question during this tasting or at the end, we have them all documented and we can answer everyone's via email so we'll get to everyone's questions at some point. And Marta will be happy to kind of write to all of you with the questions that we don't get to. But I am trying to answer as many as I can here. And we do have the answer. The answer came back for the odd lot white, and it's 6 varieties, which then also answers Kim and Lynn's question: is it always an odd number of varietals? Because I'm pretty sure.
Oh, it's not. It's whatever makes the best blend, and that's what we do for both the odd lot red and the odd lot white. Whatever makes the best blend.
Okay, perfect. So for this one, we're always talking the food pairings, and somebody asked about what you would recommend for fall. So I am just thinking about the charcuterie board that I made last night, and how it was kind of fall themed, and this would go with it perfectly. This is such a good table wine. I think this would be fantastic with a charcuterie, just because you could really pair it with a bunch of different stuff. But I also have in the past just paired it with my front porch and a fireplace, and no food whatsoever. So I think it's one of those wines that does well on its own, but could pair with kind of anything. I don't know. What do you think?
I agree with you. I think pairing it with your porch or your back patio is a wonderful place to pair it with. But with fall, you know, our crab season starts in Monterey in November, and hopefully anyway. And pairing this with something like Chiappino, I think, would also pair very well. Also, we get a lot of Indian summers, so there's still time to barbecue. I think it would pair even with ribs. So I think it's very versatile wine.
All right, you ready for the next one? Oh, you're drinking slower than me. You're talking too much. That's how you always know someone's talking too much, when they've got wine left in their glass, Marta.
Gotta speed up. I gotta speed up.
So this is our 2017 Petite Syrah that we are opening now. And I'm thinking we start with the video we have that shows where we grow the Petite Syrah, which is down in our Hames Valley vineyard. So I think we can start with that. And it's kind of cool because it just shows how much further south it is than a lot of the other stuff that we have going on.
And so Scheid has roughly 4,000 acres and 12 different vineyards over a 70-mile stretch. And so you can see how far south this is from Monterey and how far inland it is. We're zooming in on Hames. And this is where we have our, we have a lot of our warmer climate varieties, Cabernet Sauvignon, Petit Verdot, and as well as some of our port varieties. But we have our Petite Syrah, and we also have, which we have about 175 total acres, 90 of which is from our new white flower vineyard, which is all farmed organically. And we are planning to transition a lot of the Hames to organic.
Yeah, so Petite Syrah, again, I think that's one of those kind of like curious grapes where you kind of don't know, is it a Syrah? Is it Petite Syrah related to Syrah? Is it Shiraz? So what is Petite Syrah in comparison to all those other grapes?
So Petite Syrah was developed and bred actually by a botanist in France in the 1880s called Francois Derif. And he bred Pelarsin, which is almost an extinct variety, with Syrah. And so he actually bred them, got the seed, planted it, and propagated these vines. When those vines were transported to Australia, they got to be called Derif after Francois. And when they were brought to the United States and to California in the 1880s, they took on the name Petite Syrah. And DNA analysis has determined that they are the same, but that's why you will sometimes see different names for the same variety.
And I have heard in the past, so you can talk a little bit about this, is when there's more tannin on a grape, which you can kind of tell by the color and all that, that it's healthier for you. So is there any truth to that? Am I losing weight while I'm drinking this Petite Syrah?
That would be wonderful if you weren't for losing weight. But a lot of the pigments in red grapes are known to have health benefits. And if you've ever been able to visit a vineyard and you can slice open a vine, not a vine, but a berry, you'll notice that the pulp is white and the skins are where all the color is. And some grapes have a lot more color than others. Obviously, Petite Syrah is. You can't see my finger, for instance, through this. You know, you can't, or writing through this. That's always my key, if I can read through it. And Petite Syrah, the berries are really small. And so they have a lot of surface to volume ratio, so that you get a lot of color, and that these colors those pigments and tannins can contribute to reducing cholesterol, lowering blood pressure, and some other health benefits. So these are some of the benefits of drinking red wine.
Drink up, Scheid family. Petite Sirah. So I'm getting, definitely you get the black fruit on this one.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, yeah. It's rich black fruit, a lot of ripe plums, a little bit of blackberry, hints of cranberry, even to me, a little bit.
Yeah, but really smooth, like spice, a little like kind of soft spice on it.
Peppery.
For the, I don't know how, for those that are actually drinking this as we do it, sometimes I think you think Petite Sirah and you're like, ooh, that's like way too tannic, way too harsh. I can't do it. But I feel like this one is really smooth and super approachable, you know?
And that can be attributed a lot to winemaking and the winemaking style that Scheid likes to portray, which is more fruit forward. We try to have more. We try not to leave it on the skin so long, so it just would get chewier and chewier. And for those of you that don't really know what tannin is, think about when when you put something in a wine in your mouth and it feels like it coats your tongue, or makes your mouth all like you're chewing, or dries out your tongue. Those are tannins. And tannins, besides the health benefits, they also help the aging of the wine. And it's like giving the wine some structure so that the wine can age well over time.
Yeah, no, I did an awesome job. Like I said, it's way smoother than you would expect it to be. For this one, because once again, I'm thinking about food. I want like a cowboy style chili, just like thick chunks of meat, beans, and then of course like cornbread toasted with butter. But for the parents, definitely like that good
house for dinner
chili would be, I think, fantastic and would like really hold up well with like kind of the fat proteins binding, you know?
I think you're right. I was kind of going for the steak tacos or like a smoked brisket, something like that. And also because of the tannins in this would also be an excellent accompaniment to cheese.
Everybody loves cheese. Yep. All right, so I mean, these are the three wines. So now we can kind of get to a few more questions that I wasn't able to get to earlier. And somebody asked about the aging. Francesca asked about do the wines we're tasting have aging potential?
Yes, they do. Especially the wines that have more structure. So the Petite Sirah and the Grenache Blanc, the Aglat Red that's a variety I would want you to drink up within 3 or 4 years, just because it's softer. We purposely made that wine to be soft and approachable and easy to drink. The Grenache Blanc, I think, again, in like a Chardonnay that was barrel aged, I think you want in the 4 to 6 year range. But the Petite Sirah, however, I think that could easily last 20 years.
I will, Francesca, I will attest to it. We opened a 2007 Estate Petite Sirah in the tasting room last week, and it was fire. It was absolutely delicious. And so yes, I can personally say that I've seen these wines age, and they do absolutely wonderful for sure.
They do say that the average aging most time that most people age wine for, though, is 4 hours. The time it takes to buy the wine, get home, and make dinner.
Yeah. And then another question that we've been asked in the tasting room quite some time, a few times, and then also Jim and Barb just asked about the fires and have they affected the grapes in the vineyards? And I know that's on everyone's mind right now.
You know, our hearts go out to the grape growers, the wineries that have had to deal with a lot of this fire. We just feel fortunate that our quality of fruit has remained high. We have had no issues, and that all of our employees that did have to evacuate got to go home to their homes. But in some areas, there will be some issues, and but it's just too early to tell. And the labs have been overwhelmed by people trying to get analysis. And usually in California, fires are only in one area, but this year, sadly, we have fires throughout the state. So I think it was almost 4 million acres we have now burned.
Yeah, it's so sad.
And we're not even all the way to fire season yet.
So this question goes along kind of with this, I think. We've had a few people ask how climate change has impacted wine production.
Climate change is going to be huge. And if anybody wants, I can send them a varietal diagram. It shows most varieties grow within a very distinct temperature range, which is why in our vineyards, you'll see in the northern part of the county, we have Pinot Noir and Chardonnay, which are cooler climate varieties. And in the southern part of the county, you'll have the Petit Syrah and the Petit Verdot, because they can handle more heat. Well, if the temperature heats up, what happens is those varieties that you used to be able to plant in a cool climate variety, you're no longer able to. And so you see, for instance, in Bordeaux, they just approved some new varieties that they're able to plant to help them deal with the climate change. If the temperatures rise markedly, Monterey County will want to be one of the areas that won't be affected as much because we have this maritime climate. So we have all this influence from the Blue Canyon out in the bay that cools our area. The same thing can be said for parts of Chile, but that can't be said for parts of Spain or even for Napa. They will feel more effects from climate change sooner than we will.
And another testament to our wines aging, Jim and Barb just let us know that they're currently drinking a 2009 Petit Syrah, and it's
Very
awesome.
Good. Very good.
Here's Jim and Barb. Thank you. All right, so I think that's kind of all the time we have, but like I said, if there were any questions that we didn't get to, we will send out emails, we will answer them all. If you have more questions that you think of after, please feel free to reach out by email. I know Marta is more than happy to respond to each and every one of you. So I'll get to that fun promotion. So what we're going to do is we're going to offer free shipping on the 3 bottles that we tasted through today. And you can double that up, you can triple that up, you can quadruple that up with free shipping to the continental US and the states that we ship to. So sorry, Mom, sorry, sister, I will not be sending you any wine in New Jersey, unfortunately. But the code that you would use on the website is WeShip, WESHIP. WeShip. It's only for 48 hours, and it is to get some more of these wines. If you're local and you're like, what the heck, we will also drop it off at your door for free delivery as well, if that's something that you guys are interested. So just give us a call in the tasting room. Also, after this, you guys are all going to be receiving an email with another Zoom link to join us, because we're going to toast the 2020 harvest season. So definitely be on the lookout for that. And in general, I just really want to thank all of you who hopped on and stayed with us and asked us all these awesome questions. This was our first time doing this, our first time going virtual. So if you guys have feedback, if you want us to try something else, if there's a certain wine you want us to taste, we do plan on doing this at least every club release with our new released wines. But we are 100% open for feedback. And finally, Marta, I want to thank you for doing this tasting with me. It really is, it blows my mind that I'm sitting here with such an amazing winemaker and getting to do this and experience this and try something new with you. So from the bottom of my heart, thank you.
Thank you all. And honestly, send your questions, because we will answer them all. So it's great to have you all with us and to be able to share a glass of wine with you, even if it is virtually. Yes. I look forward to the day when we can all share them together.
All right. Well, cheers to everyone. Thank you. And cheers. Have a great night.
Thank you. Good night.